share screen. Okay, if you recall, last class we started to discussing about the command line arguments, etc., and also input from console. And last class, I believe we already covered the scanner one for system.in. And I remember I also showed you how to get input from command line, okay? And there is a second way that we can do that from console, is you can also just use this method, console method, but it's from system package. So if you want to use the console object to take care of input from the command line, you can call system.console to create a console object. And then you can just call read line. And if you do this read line, it's read the complete line, okay? And if you call the string, a read line will return a string. And if you call the trim, and it will take away the zeros. The zero, okay, because sometimes you may type some space. So anyway, not a zero, sorry, space, okay. And because then this result is a string, but over here, suppose we want to do some integer. Then you need to call this integer dot parse int method, Java method, okay? It's from integer class, and later on we will learn class today. And plug in the string, then you can convert that string number to the integer. Then we can do calculation. Here it shows. And also, if you want to quit, stop the loop, over here, it's okay. Suppose you type quit, then you can call if it equals this word, etc. And if it is, then you're going to stop. And we can continue doing this. And for each of that, you're going to convert the string number to integer. Then you can do summation, okay? And here you can keep getting the new input from the command line, okay? So that's what this part shows us. The second part. And here we also care about the command line. And last class I showed you the command line. One way is you hard code it, that not as we configure in the NetBeans the properties with that run configuration. And the second way is let me see. I probably needed to reshare screen. Hold on. Let me not this one. To bring this one and share. Can you all see this screen?
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, and then in this case, it's from the command line. Okay, the command line. The command line, then you need to first, on my example instruction, I say you need first to get to the respective folder. Okay. Then what you can do, you type Java. So this is a command. Oh, so that's the command. So you want to execute Java. Following that, you put this Java class, because this is from this package, chapter 1, console input example package. So that's why here you need this dot. And if you recall, all these three after that class, this is command line argument. That's for, if you recall, that main method, that it has the parameter is a string array, So whatever you type will go to this string array. And here I type arg1, arg2, arg3, so that's how it output this, that all arguments, command line argument. And then it's go to our console, if you recall, that console, that the console has that read line here, that read line method. So then I enter 1,000, this 1,000 will go to this console.read line. Okay, and then here is ask you to enter another. So 6,000, it will go to that console.read line. And then it get that data parse integer. Is it whatever here? And of course, we also call that a train, okay, in case we enter zeros, or nothing, space. Then you can convert it to integer. That's how we can do the summation, can sum 1,000 and 6,000. Okay, so this is regarding Java command line. Okay. Okay. And next we need to go back to, hold on, okay. I first needed to, so we basically complete Java array study, okay. And today we will start with the second unit on our course webpage. So we are going to learn class. Class, okay. And over here, we are going to learn, create some user-defined class. User-defined class. So a class here is kind of serves as a blueprint for a certain category of objects. So it's some abstract blueprint to describe the objects, okay, object. And this semester, we will spend quite a lot of time on OOP, okay, so OOP program, so it's an object-oriented programming. And object-oriented programming, so the very first word is object. Is it? So how do we create object? We use class to create object. Okay, so that's why this is a basic part, learn how to create a class. Okay, how to create a class. So you have already learned some class. Is it like a string? String is a Java already defined that class. We just go ahead to borrow, to use it. Is it? So each time when you use string, you do string s. Is it equals like hello? Is it something? Basically, this is equivalent to do new string something. Is it? So this string is a class, but this new string something, then to create a string object. That string object is referenced by the s. So reference by s. S is a Java variable. Is a Java variable. And who still remember whenever we said new, previously we learned for array, that when we learn array, we said we need to do new. And for new, it create memory, that, and where the memory is located, who still remember? It's stack memory or heap memory. Who still remember for the new case? it's heap memory, is it? Okay, so keep this in mind. Let's see, so we kind of have the idea about class. So class is blueprint to describe a certain category of objects, okay. Then next, let's see. Generally speaking, for a class, it has two parts, okay. So variable parts, and normally we call it instance variable. And it also have what? Instance method. Instance method. So it contains, like, generally speaking, these two parts, okay. So instance variable, normally it's used to describe attributes of objects. We say object or instance. That's why here we say instance variable, okay. And for the method, what it does, so it describe the behaviors of objects or instances. Okay, generally speaking, for a class, okay, normally you have this two part, instance method and instance variables, but we will see there are some other stuff, okay. And for object-oriented programming, so the first is object. So object is created by class, etc. So you create an object with a class, okay, with a class. And normally for the attributes of an object, we don't want to expose it to the external world. So generally speaking, we wanted to keep them as private. Okay, so keep them as private, what does that mean? That means, so private is the object's visibility. Visibility, if it's private, that means only objects. So if it's private, then only object itself can access it. That's what private means, okay. And for the instance method, then what the concept is, it's describe behavior. Basically, it's also provides the interface. So method basically is provide some interface for outer world to access. That's it. So then we would prefer, because that's otherwise you cannot do anything. It's just like that string. The string has some method like the size method, assuming, is it, or like the length or something, is it? So anyway, so those are methods. And we can always access. But basically, if you recall, you don't know what's inside the string, but you can access those methods. Those methods serves like what we just said, interface. Is it for you to access? Okay. And because of this, you want the outer world to access. That's why normally we define them as public. So public visibility. Okay, so that's the general idea about a class. Okay, a class. And so for a class, generally speaking, we want to, whenever you want to describe certain category of object, you want to design a class. And normally when we design a class, you can start with UML. Diagram. A UML is Universal Markup Language. Okay, so anyway, it's some kind of diagram to describe how your class is going to look like. So we are going to start with our time example, time class. Okay, so regarding the time class, then we want to design the UML diagram. So what we can do is, okay, so this is the name of the class. Then you have a big rectangle, okay? And generally speaking, like we said, a class has two parts, instance method, instance variables, and the instance method, generally speaking, okay? So instance variables and the instance method. So generally these two blocks, we divide them. So the top one, generally speaking, we hold the instance variables. And the next one, we hold the instance methods. Okay, and then what next you need to think about, okay, regarding support for the time class. So instance variable is regarding attributes. Attribute, then just think, okay, for time, what we want the time object, the attribute. Normally we know regarding time, we want to know hour, minute, and second, is it? And of course, here we want to do some universals. We also want to know like AM or PM, something. As we just want to do like from 0 to 12, something like that. Then you also want to know it's AM or PM, something like that. Okay, so those are the attributes of the time class should carry, is it? So then when we design, we need to put them as instance variable. So for time, then we care about its hour. So generally speaking, when you describe hours, well, it's an integer, is it? And it's an integer. So in the UML diagram, you name the instance variable. So name instance variable, is it? And then colon following it is the time. And also before it, I put a minus sign here. That means this instance variable M hour is what? It's private visibility. Visibility. Okay, so now we get the first one done. Okay, then the second one we interested in the minute. And the type, we also want it to be integer. Next one, we also interested in, it's in the morning or in the afternoon, AM or PM. So we can name it M, AM, PM. And generally you use A or P, so it should be a character. A chart, is it a chart? And so once you have those information, basically it's kind of you know the time, okay, some specific time, okay. So that's the first block regarding that UML diagram. It's regarding all the instance variables here, okay. And if we, and also over here, when we name it, generally speaking in Java, for variable, we prefer to use camel case. Camel case means you have multiple words for the variable, then you put like over here, the capital case and the small case, okay. And normally we don't use underscore. Okay, underscore, some other language prefer use underscore. And the Java normally prefer to use camel case. Okay, so okay, camel case like a variable, etc. So you capitalize the first word of the complex word. But generally speaking, for the first one, we do the small case. But for the later word, you capitalize each letter. Okay. Okay, so this is regarding instance method, instance variables you define. And as we said, for a class, it has two parts. Second part is the interface part. Interface is the behavior, so all the method, etc. So the method, generally speaking, it's public available. Okay, so in UML diagram, if you want to provide the public visibility, then you use a plus sign. Okay, plus sign. And normally when we define a class, those are the two generally category of method you need to provide. One is get method, or we call them accessors. And the other is set method. And they are called mutators. Mutators. Okay, so here the idea is, just think about it. It's just a time, is it? Time, because all of those hour, minute, AM, PM, it's private. So external world cannot see it. But then how do you let, suppose you have the clock or a watch, how do you know the time? Then you need to provide some interface. So those instance method interface provide the interface for us to know some of the values, to get to know something regarding the attributes. But you can determine if you want to expose the attributes. So you can determine. Maybe you said, okay, I don't want to expose AM, PM. Then you don't provide any method regarding it. Or you provide the method only private accessible. Then publicly, you cannot access AM or PM. Okay, so that's why it gives you flexibility. So interface, so you as a designer can determine the visibility regarding your class. Okay, so here suppose, okay, regarding our minute and AM, PM, we want to, because if you design a watch or watch, you want to know of those information, is it? So we should provide some method, is it, to do that, okay? So here, generally speaking, then like for hour, if you want to know that, then you can provide a method, we call it get method. And you also provide a parameter in the UML diagram. And this is a method, so you name it as a word, starting with a verb, is that get. And you also want to provide the return type of this method. In this case, it's the type is what it's integer. So that's a return type. You may also want to know the minute, then you can provide the information, get minute. And then the return type is what? It's also integer. And the AM and PM, it's the same thing. You can provide as called get AM, PM. The return type, well, it's char. Okay, so all this are what? Are the get method. They are accessors. Okay, so you can retrieve the value of hour, minute, AM, and PM. Okay, and also just like your watch or the clock, you want to also adjust the time, change the time. So suppose like a daylight saving time, so we need to adjust it. Then you can provide some function called suppose set hour. Because you're going to change, so it also needs some parameters, is it, to adjust it. So you maybe provide, okay, a parameter, suppose it's some number, is it? And the return type, generally speaking, for set method, it's void. So this belongs to mutator set path, set method. And maybe you also want to have a method called set time. And if it's set time, you want to set hour, minute, AM, PM, you want to reset the time if you go to a different country, is that? Okay, then in this case, you need some parameter, okay, P, hour, integers regarding hour and minute, the parameter name and the char, PM, PM, is it? And the return type is void. Okay, it's void. Okay, so that's regarding the set method. So for method, it doesn't mean all method must be public, must be plus. No, it depends on your design. In our case here, okay, we want to have the get method, set method, all as public available. Okay, then in your UML diagram, then you can provide the method name and the parameter and the return time. Okay, so this is a very general UML diagram. And regarding this example, we also need some constructor that, like over here, that time. And later on we will say, so this is a constructor. Okay, and we have some other method, maybe like to string. So whatever method you have, you need to list them in this UML diagram, and also determine if you want it public available or only private available. So maybe my function, is it, and like integer, then that's private. That's also fine. Okay, that's also fine. So you can make the determination. It's determined by your design, okay, by your application. Okay, so this is regarding the UML diagram. Okay, so next let's take a look at this time class. We kind of understand the general idea about class, is that, and so in Java, okay, in Java, to define a class, oh, probably let me do it here. So this example, I put it in the, if you take a look over here on my NetBeans, the navigation part pane. So this is a project, it's called Java class example 1, is it? And so over here, by default, when you create an object, so that's the, when you create a project, so that's a default Java file provided, including main. So that is a method including main, is it? And later on, we will see generally this will serve, we call it application program. Or some lot of time we also call it a driver. So driver means it contains main method, is it? And if you take a close look, you will find for this, it's a different class. It's called time class. So time class is defined in a different file called time.java file. Okay, and how, so in this previous our example just has a single Java file, and here we have multiple Java. How do you do that? So on the, so you can highlight the package, is it? And you do new, and you can create a new Java class. And then you can give it a name. Let's suppose, okay. So here is our time, suppose I call it time 3, is it? Then did you see over here? Then here to automatically create that time 3 class for you. It's just a very, it's kind of like an empty template, is it, for the class definition. Okay, so in NetBeans, that's how we add a new class. Okay, whenever you want to add a new class, you can right click and do new, and you can add a new Java class. Okay, Java class. Okay, so that's how we add. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't. Okay, so next let's go back to our time class. Okay. So for this time class, the basic framework of the time class, we kind of already understand it. So now regarding this time.java file, okay. And so for this class, you need to give it a name. So this is class name. And it must be preceded with this keyword class. And this class, you also provide its visibility, accessibility. It's a public available one. So that's why you give this word public. Is that okay? Public, and then we have the curly brackets, okay, and ending curly brackets. And generally speaking, whenever you define a class, we have two parts: instance variable and the instance method. Is that so? We start with the define of the instance method. So all this m hour, m minute, and m amp. I should use a camel case, okay? I shouldn't use underscore, okay? So anyway, so those are the instance method. Oh, not instance method, instance variables. So in our time class, we have these 3 instance variables: hour, minute, and AM, PM. Okay, and they are defined the accessibility. So visibility is private. Okay, so we are done with the instance variables definition. The next one, don't worry at this point. And then next, let's see here. And let me maybe first, we don't need to get to the detail. Okay, if you take another look, you will see all the methods here. Is that all the methods? So this get hour, get minute, get AM, PM. Previously, we already discussed in the UML diagram. So they are instance methods. And they belong to the get category. So they are accessors. Okay, and generally speaking, for accessors, their return time depends on what information you want to return. Okay, so it's not void. Generally speaking, okay, they are not void. So and their visibility are all public. Okay, all public. And then let's see the set method. Is it for the set method, the return type, generally speaking, it's void. And generally speaking, it has parameter. Okay. Generally speaking, so these two are set methods. Or we call them mutators. And normally they have parameter list. Okay, so here you have the parameter list, type and the parameter name, type of parameter name, etc. At the set hour, same thing, etc. So we have these two set method in this case. And if you take a look, we also have another method called toString, and it has a return type. And if you take a close look, okay, the parameter is empty. So this one is also, we can also consider as get method. Okay. And so this two type of method, so get method, accessor, and set method or mutator, we kind of know. Then let's take a look at this two. These two kind of weird if you take a look. Is that whenever we set a method, whenever you define a method, it generally speaking, you should have return type of the method and the method name. Is that following what? Parameter list. The parameters. Okay, generally speaking, and of course, here you also have visibility and maybe something else. Okay, later on we will also see. But generally speaking, a Java method should have return type, name, and parameter list. Okay, but if you take a close look of these two methods, they don't have return type. No return type. It's just the name and the parameter list. And if you take another close look, you will find the name kind of weird. If we take a close look at the name, the same as the class name. Okay, so these two methods, they are special. They are called constructors. Okay, so constructors are special methods used to create objects. Create object. And normally what it does is initialize instance variable with some values. That's what it does. Okay, constructor does what? A constructor does initializing instance variables. Okay, and the constructor same name. Okay, but no return type. Be very careful. Okay, always keep this in mind. Constructor doesn't have a return type and must be the same name as a class name. And the purpose is to create, use it to create an object. When you invoke it, whenever you do new, okay, you call constructor to create an object. An object need a constructor to be created, okay? Okay, so this is regarding constructor, and then let's expand. And then let's start discussing the constructor first, okay? For this first constructor, the parameter list is empty. So normally we see this kind of constructor, you can call it a default constructor. Or we say constructor without parameters. Let's say without parameters, default constructor. So the default constructor, if we take a close look, you will find, okay, you just provide initialization value to the instance variables. Is it? So assign some default values to instance variables. That's why we say it's initialize instance variable. Okay, so that's what the default constructor does. Okay, and this one we don't need to worry. Later on we will come back. And then next, let's take a look at the second. The second constructor has parameter. Okay, as a parameter. And as a parameter, then what you're going to do inside it, you assign parameter to instance variable. So generally speaking, this kind of constructor, we can call it, okay, explicit value constructor. Or we can also call it a constructor with arguments or parameter. So the parameter list is not empty, is it? What you're going to do is you assign parameter to instance variable. Assign parameters to instance variables. And of course, we should validate that, okay? And here I just simplify. You should validate that. Is it like our many shouldn't be negative value in this case? A and P and should be only A and P, is it? But here I just try to scale later. We will discuss more. Okay, here just initial discussion regarding constructor with arguments, okay, with parameters. So anyway, the purpose is not using default value, but with a specified value. Okay, so here we see these two kinds of constructor. Okay, so constructor, just remember it must be the same name as your class name, and there is no return type. And the purpose for a constructor is to initialize instance variables, and hence it can create an object with whatever the initialization values that you provided. Okay, those are two constructors. Then next, let's see the get method or accessors. So all these three, we said they are accessors, or we call them get methods. Is it? And if you take it, they are quite simple. Is it just has a return statement, return state, and return what? Return the respective instance variable. Okay, so like AMPM, is that? It's instance variable. Okay, you cannot return PAN, that doesn't exist. It's got to be the instance variable. Okay, instance variable. Okay, this get method quite straightforward. Is next, let's take a look at the set method. Okay, for the set method, set hour. It has parameter hour. Is it? And what it does is assign the value. Okay, so it's pretty, and normally we should also do the precondition check. Is it? So hour should be legitimate value. Is it between 0 to 12? Is it some value like that? Okay, and here I just try to explain the method concept. So we skip the validation. Okay, so this is set hour, then there is no return type, as it generally speaking. And this is set time, similar as that. So you can just assign value from the parameter to instance variable. Okay, please. So these are called mutators or set methods. And why we said? Because you reassign, is it? So they are modified. That's why we call them mutator. You update the value, is it? Through from the initialized value, you update that. Okay, so that's why we call them mutators. So we keep this in mind also. And the next one, let's take a look this method, because later we will see this also a lot. This toString method. toString method, the return type is a string. Okay, and we didn't change anything, is it, of the instance variable. What we did is we just want to let our time output be output as some readable formatting. As I suppose the hour, okay, we want to output as a 10:50 a.m. Is it? That's the formatted output. So that's why here, oh, we call this integer to string because hour is integer, is it? And then colon, is it? And then minute, is it? Minute, and we also convert to string, and then AM or PM, is it? Each integer, and then we concatenate all of them together as a string, then I return it. So this is just trying to provide, normally the toString is used to describe the object. The object that you can use this toString method to contribute this purpose. Okay, so we have all of this concept, basic concept. Okay, visibility, private versus public, instance variable and instance method, and another one is constructor. Okay, of this, and then over here we said it's private. Okay, so private, that means the visibility only accessible inside the class. Is it? So that's why here we can access them because all of this is within the class, time class itself. So they are accessible. Is it? They are accessible within the class. But if we go to the driver, is it suppose over here that I said, okay, I want to access, so we have that object T, is it? I want to T1 dot M hour. If you take a look here, it doesn't recognize that, cannot find the symbol. Is that this is because what? Because it's only visible in time class. This is a different class. Is it? So it's not accessible. So that's why we put it as private. We only allow it to be accessible inside the time class. Besides that, it's not accessible. But if you take a look, like this set time, this set time is, and also plus over here, this get hour, they are accessible. Is it? Accessible in a different class. Is it? Because what? Because the visibility is what? Is public. That's how you can directly access. There is no arrow. Is it? So here, no arrow. And here we have arrow. That's why, that's a difference between, that's because this is private. Private is not accessible. And here, this is accessible because it's public. Okay, so this is regarding the public and private difference. Okay, we can get rid of this. Okay, and I think it's we run out of time today.